a geek, a nerd being picked on, you could relate to the X-Men. The idea of being simultaneously special and persecuted is a very potent, powerful one.
The X-Men were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in 1963, but never really took off until the late 70s, with stories by Chris Claremont, art by Dave Cockrum and John Byrne, and New Mutants like Storm, and especially Wolverine.
He's got that whole bad boy thing going on. It's James Dean, sort of Clint Eastwood kind of attitude to him.
Wolverine was the kind of character you could not have had in the 1960s because he was very much a reflection of that cynicism and sense of irony that came out of the 60s, that came out of Vietnam and Watergate. Wolverine was a superhero for Generation X. He wasn't afraid to take it to the bad guys exactly the way they would take it to you, or worse.
I know as kids we were always fascinated by Wolverine's adamantium claws. But it was just the idea of having a weapon so handy all the time, never having to reach for it, just, snap.
Wolverine, in many ways, was the precursor to a darker hero. In the early 1980s, a new breed of creatures would take rough justice to new levels.
It was really up to people of my generation to basically give Batman his balls back.
In the closing years of the Cold War, inflation was high. The potential for global destruction was ever present. And the comic book industry was trying to find its place in the world.
I think all those things balance together to a questioning of which way is the world going? And that reflected itself in the superheroes.
We couldn't accept a goody-goody coming down and doing things just because they were good. But we could accept somebody who felt some twisted emotional need to fight evil. And we could accept it with violence, and we could accept it with irony.
Which is what writer-artist Frank Miller wanted to give readers.
My mother says that I was somewhere around 6 years old when I walked into the kitchen and held up a bunch of sheets of typing paper I'd folded in half and stapled in the middle and said, "This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life."
Miller got his big break in 1979, when, at the age of 22, he took over one of Marvel's second-string titles, Daredevil.
I was very hungry to do it because it was my chance to do a crime comic, just having to be in red tights.
Daredevil was a Stan Lee, Bill Everett creation from the 1960s. By day, Matt Murdock is a New York defense attorney. By night, he's a vigilante with unique powers and problems.
The dude's blind, but all his other senses are heightened. So right then and there, you're like, this is one of the most implausible comic book characters on the planet. Blind guy flipping off roofs and whatnot, dressed like he's dressed. But Miller brought this really wonderful humanity to it, and the humanity came from this place of Daredevil being so flawed, just being kind of broken.
I figured Daredevil had to be a Catholic, because only a Catholic could be a vigilante and an attorney at the same time.
Miller turned Daredevil's sweet blonde girlfriend into a drug addict. And created a new love interest for Daredevil, Elektra, Matt Murdock's college girlfriend, now an assassin for hire.
And I stole one of Will Eisner's best spirit stories of a character called Sans Serif. Stole it structurally top to bottom, but I make no excuses. He knows it, and I told him.
I was always slightly in contempt of the nice girl next door who your mother was always introducing you to. It was a slut down the street that was really interesting.
When Miller killed Elektra after 14 issues, fans were shocked, but admired the artistic guts it took to kill such a popular character. Later, Marvel brought her back to life. Some characters are just too good or too good-looking to stay dead. Miller challenged the traditional superhero notion of non-lethal justice when he revived a 1970s vigilante called the Punisher. After the Mafia guns down his family, ex-Marine Frank Castle wages a one-man war against crime and actually kills people. This was a little too strong for the 70s, but fit the 80s like a .44 bullet in a magnum chamber. To Daredevil, the Punisher was a villain, but readers loved him, and a host of writers and artists tried to meet the demand.
People voted for Reagan because he kicked butt, because he came on as a tough guy. And I think that attitude was mirrored in superheroes of the 80s. It's not to say the people who wrote The Punisher believed that, but I think they did tap into a popular mood.
Then came the British. Same edge, different slant. more European, more political. Writer Alan Moore and artist Dave Gibbons created a 12-issue miniseries for DC in 1985 called The Watchmen.
Alan Moore said he was really out to kind of destroy the whole notion of not just superheroes, but heroes in general, because these are people that you trust with your lives, and nobody should do that. You really needed to trust yourself.
In the alternate universe of The Watchmen, superheroes are morally ambivalent, impotent, or psychotic. One of them ends the Cold War by faking an alien invasion that unites the world and kills 3 million New Yorkers in the process.
Alan created this story commenting on superheroes, talking about superheroes, what they meant, and also talking about how it felt to be out on the streets in 1985 with Russia versus America, feeling like the nuclear clock was clicking closer and closer.
Watchmen was the most complex and intricate superhero story ever produced. It inspired a generation of artists and writers.
Most of the guys in comics lived within about 50 miles of here. So we were all at the same poker games and the same parties. And it's just, wow, how the hell did he do that? And you went home and you ripped up whatever you had done that week and just said, no, damn it, there's more I can do.
Even Frank Miller felt he could do more. His next project, a 4-issue fantasy of the future, The Dark Knight Returns. It pits an aging Batman against psychotic foes and a corrupt society.
I just wanted to do this older Batman and to make him really nasty. I thought, what better way to make him a badass than have him be the Dirty Harry out there, the guy that nobody likes.
For Miller's Batman, the biggest problem isn't the Joker, but Superman, a well-meaning Boy Scout in thrall to Ronald Reagan, conducting one-man secret wars in Central America. Superman and Batman had been friends since 1940, but weren't after 1986.
I'll gleefully take credit for breaking up the Batman-Superman friendship. Bruce has been one who enforces order in the world and believes that entropy is the natural state of existence, whereas Superman believes that order is the norm. These two people would not like each other. They just wouldn't.
We felt at the time like every Batman story that could have been told had already been told. And suddenly, here's Frank.
In the mainstream media, it got a great deal of attention, positive and negative, mostly positive. Within the comics industry, it seemed to be closest thing to a bar fight anybody could have asked for, in that it was quite controversial. That I actually got called up by former Batman writers saying I had ruined their character.
Dark Knight has been accused of being a pro-fascist vision. I mean, it doesn't make it any less interesting as a work of art, nor does it say particularly that that's the side that Frank comes down on.
I think my stuff's kind of jolly, but that's just me.
The Watchmen and Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. There were 2 watershed books of that period. I think it was a good thing and a bad thing. I think that even though those works are both brilliant works, the traditional innocence of superheroes went out of the market at that point.
In the grim and gritty era, old characters were given new problems. Child abuse, a daring new topic in the 1980s, was revealed as the cause of the Hulk's anger. His father had beat him and his mother. Other heroes developed severe drinking problems. One of the biggest changes of all happened to Superman's arch-enemy. For 45 years, Lex Luthor had been a mad scientist. That had no longer been grim and gritty enough. So he was transformed into the most evil thing on Earth, a 1980s businessman.
Lex Luthor's transformation reflected another concern about Reagan's America, which is the real source of evil was once again, like in the 1930s, corporate America.
But maybe comics' darkest moment came when DC decided to kill Robin. Not the original boy wonder, Dick Grayson. He'd been allowed to grow up, go to college, and become a character called Nightwing. This was a new Robin named Jason Todd, a replacement sidekick